In the heart of Umio, a village where red earth clung to the feet and the air often smelled of firewood and rain, there lived a girl whose beauty was more whispered about than the moon's secret love affair with the night. Her name was Obianuju, the heart that brings wealth. And true to her name, every man believed that to win her heart was to win favor from the gods. She was the kind of beauty that made palm wine sour in a man's mouth if he so much as passed her without greeting. Her skin glistened like fresh palm oil under the evening sun, and her eyes held something no man could name, but every man longed to own. Her waist beads were said to sing when she walked, her voice to calm a baby with just a hum. Traders, warriors, farmers, and sons of titled men, every single one of them tried. Obianuju was not just beautiful, she was kind. She fetched water from the stream like every other girl, her laughter echoing against the rocks. She helped elderly women with their firewood, danced during festivals, and yet, her heart remained untouched. By the time she turned 22, suitors had filled the family's compound like flies on ripe mango. They came with gifts, tubers of yam the size of a child's thigh, goats with golden bells, bags of rice, crates of malt, wrappers from Onitsha, and perfumes that smelt of foreign places. But Obianuju would not even let them speak. She would come out, glance at them, then turn her face away and walk into the house. Sometimes she didn't even come out at all. Her father, Ichi Majuabuchi, a respected elder and former palm wine tapper, began to grow restless. "Is it a curse?" he asked his wife one night. "Or is she seeing someone in secret?" Her mother, Lolo Neka, shook her head as she adjusted the wrapper over her chest. "I have asked her, Madhu. She says she has not seen anyone that touches her soul." That's what she said. Touches her soul. You know these girls of nowadays. Majuabuchi scoffed. "When we were young, love was in the cooking pot and the respect you gave your in-laws. Now they talk of soul and spirit." Word spread in Umio that Obianuju had been visited by a river goddess, and no mortal man could satisfy her. Others said she had sworn a covenant with a spirit husband. Some women even whispered that her mother might have bathed her with something from the forest, something that repelled suitors until the chosen one appeared. But Obianuju cared for none of it. Every day, she woke up before dawn, swept the compound, warmed the food, helped her mother in the small abacha business, and smiled through life like nothing was missing. But something she couldn't explain, not even to herself. Then one Harmattan morning, while she was returning from the stream, balancing a pot of water with one hand and a small basket of scent leaves with the other, she saw him. He was bent over in a small, bushy farmland near the village outskirts, pressing cassava stems into the earth. His brown skin glowed under the morning sun, his shoulders wide, his muscles lean but strong. He wore no shirt, only a pair of faded brown trousers rolled up to the knees. Sweat streamed down his back, and yet he didn't stop. She paused and watched him. The rhythm of his labor was calming, honest. There was no pride, no noise, just work. Real work. The kind that made your hands ache and your heart full. He didn't even notice her. That was when Obianuju's heart shifted. It was not a thunderclap or sudden wind. It was quiet. Like a drumbeat heard from far away, soft but deep. His name was Ebubchukwu, the glory of God. He had no father. His mother had died while he was still in his teens. He lived alone in a small thatched house by the bush path and farmed for a living. He wasn't rich. He had no motorcycle, no generator, no big name. But he had hands, strong ones, and a spirit that didn't bend. The next day, Obianuju came again. This time, she greeted him. "Good morning." Ibub wiped his forehead, surprised. "Morning," he replied, unsure whether to smile or just nod. "I passed here yesterday," she added. "You didn't notice me." He chuckled, embarrassed. "I was planting. I don't always notice things when I'm working." Obianuju smiled. "That's good. You must love what you do." He nodded. "I do." And just like that, something began. The visits continued. At first, she would bring food, boiled yam and garden egg sauce. Then she started sweeping his compound, unasked. One day, she washed his clothes. Ibub became nervous. He would stare at her while she worked, unsure of what to do with her presence. This was Obianuju, the same girl that rejected the rich boy whose father owned 2 lorries. The same girl whose beauty made men dream and sweat. Why him? He didn't believe it. He searched her eyes for trickery, but found none. She was real, gentle, joyful, and she laughed at his dry jokes like they were proverbs from the gods. Still, fear crept in. What if this was a game? What if someone sent her? What if this was a test? And then the threats came. Some of the young men in the village began warning him subtly. Ibub, be careful. She's not your class, one said during evening palm wine. You know Obianuju? If you don't leave her, you might wake up one day and not be able to farm again. Another warned with a half-smile. Fear grew like weed in his chest. He began to pull away. He stopped smiling. He no longer told her when he'd be at the farm. One day, when she came and met him outside, he didn't let her enter the house. I think you should stop coming, he said, eyes fixed on the ground. Her heart shattered like calabash. Why? He hesitated. People are talking. They say I should be careful. She took a step forward, tears swimming in her eyes. So you believe them? He didn't answer. That night, Obianuju wept into her pillow. Her mother came and asked what happened, but she didn't speak. Not a word. Not even when her father entered the room and sat at the foot of her bed. But something in Obianuju would not let go. This was not about pride or shame. She had found the one whose presence made her breathe easy. Not the riches, not the gifts, just him. Ibub, too, couldn't sleep. He stood outside his small hut and looked at the moon. It looked back at him, calm and expectant. What if she really saw something in him that others didn't? What if this was what he had been praying for? The next morning came with a strange silence. The cock crowed, the wind rustled the mango leaves, but inside Ibub's chest, there was a storm that refused to calm. He had not slept well. Every time he shut his eyes, Obianuju's tear-filled face appeared in the darkness, like a shadow the moon refused to chase away. He tried to carry on like nothing was wrong. He tied his hoe and cutlass together with a red rag, slung it over his shoulder, and marched toward the farm like he always did. But his steps were heavy, like his feet had been dipped in wet clay. What if I made a mistake? He asked himself as he stepped on the familiar footpath, passing the orange tree that always bore fruit out of season. The farm welcomed him with silence. The soil was fertile. The plants were green. But nothing felt alive without her laughter filling the air, without her humming as she picked scent leaves, without her dropping questions like, do you like oha soup better with cocoyam or achi? He stopped and stared at the sky. I am a poor man, he muttered to the clouds, but I'm not a coward. Meanwhile, in Ichi Majuabuchi's compound, confusion had taken root like stubborn weed. Obianuju had not eaten since the day before. She sat under the mango tree in front of the house, her chin on her knees, her eyes fixed on the empty road, as if willing someone to appear. Obianuju, her mother called gently, placing a plate of yam porridge beside her. You can't keep starving yourself. It's just a man. You're a woman. You'll meet others. She didn't answer. Her father joined, hands behind his back. We need to talk. Still, she remained quiet. Why him? He finally asked. Do you know how many men have begged me for your hand? Men whose fathers are chiefs. Men who came with gifts. Men who, Papa. She cut in softly, lifting her gaze to him. But none of them is him. The word silenced him. I've never felt this way before, she continued. When I'm with him, my heart rests. He doesn't pretend. He doesn't try to impress me. He's just real. And I love that about him. Majuabuchi swallowed hard. But you're beautiful, my daughter. You can have any man in this land. I don't want any man, she whispered. I want my man. Her mother sighed. Then what happened? Why is he pushing you away? I don't know. Maybe the pressure got to him. But I know he loves me. He's just scared. Silence settled like dust. That evening, as the sun prepared to retire behind the hills of Umio, Ibub made a decision. He bathed, wore his only well-ironed native wear, rubbed his body with palm kernel oil, and walked toward Ichi Majuabuchi's compound with shaky legs but a steady heart. People stared. Children stopped playing and whispered, Is that not the poor farmer boy? What is he doing in Obianuju's compound? Does he want to be killed? Ibub ignored them all. When he reached the compound, he stood straight and clapped gently. Poke, poke, poke. Obianuju was the one who opened the gate. Their eyes met, and time paused. I want to speak to your father, he said, voice low but clear. She blinked twice in disbelief, then quickly called out, Papa, he's here. Majuabuchi stepped out, folding his hands across his chest. His face was unreadable. Ibub bowed. Good evening, sir. Evening, The elder replied. What brings you here? Ibub took a deep breath. I have come to beg. Not for food, not for money, but for your daughter. Majuabuchi raised a brow. I know I am not rich. I know I live in a house with a leaking roof. I know I can't compete with the men who come with baskets of goods. But I will never lie to her. I will never raise my hand against her. And I will work with every bone in my body to make sure she never lacks. There was silence. Even the wind stopped blowing. Obianuju's eyes filled with tears again. This time, not of sadness, but of something warm. Hope. After a long pause, Ichi Majuabuchi nodded slowly. You're brave, Ebubchukwu. You've spoken like a man. But remember, love is not just sweet words and promises. It's work. It's sacrifice. Ibub knelt down. I am ready. Obianuju's mother smiled. Then let the gods witness this moment. That night, the village buzzed like a disturbed beehive. Some were happy, some were confused, but many were angry. Especially the rejected suitors, Chijioke, son of the town's wealthiest cocoa merchant, and Obina, whose family owned half the poultry in 3 neighboring villages. They met under the Udala tree by the riverbank. You just want us to watch him marry her? Chijioke asked, fists clenched. Never, Obina spat. We'll show him his place. Days passed. Obianuju and Ibub grew even closer. She no longer snuck around. She walked boldly to his house every morning, her basket filled with food. She sang as she swept. She cooked while he farmed. They began planning their future, simple but full of laughter. Ibub even started clearing a new land for a larger farm. I will name this piece of land after you, he joked one morning, because it's the first one I started out of love. Then, one day, while he was returning from the farm with a basket of vegetables on his head, 3 boys blocked him. One had a scar across his forehead. Another carried a machete, not hidden. The last one folded his arms like a bouncer. You think you've won? One of them sneered. I don't want trouble, Ibub replied calmly. Too late for that. They pushed him. He stumbled. His vegetables scattered. They hit him, not to kill, but to warn. He returned home that night with bruises and silence. When Obianuju came and saw his face, she screamed. Who did this to you? He didn't answer. He simply held her hand and whispered, I'm not letting go. Not now. Not ever. Back in the village square, the elders began to speak. Let love be, one of them said. Obianuju has chosen with her heart. But this boy is not her equal. Maybe not in wealth, replied Ichi Nadazi, but in honor and love, he is more than many. In time, the people of Umio slowly began to respect Ibub, not because he was rich, but because he didn't run. He stood. He worked. He loved. One moonlit evening, under a canopy of palm leaves and village chants, Obianuju and Ebubchukwu were married. It was not the most expensive wedding, but it was the most joyful. Even the village masquerade came out to dance. And from that day, everything began to change. Ibub's farm flourished more than ever before. A buyer from a neighboring town noticed the quality of his crops and offered a contract. With time, he built a new house. 3 rooms, aluminum roofing, cement floor. He even bought a motorcycle. But he never changed. And neither did she. They would sit under their Udala tree, laughing about the days when love felt like war. And each time, Obianuju would smile and whisper, You were always the one. The sun rose softly over Umio the morning after the wedding, as though the heavens themselves were reluctant to disturb the peace that had settled over the village. For the first time in many moons, the village square was quiet, not from silence, but from contentment. Everyone, from the oldest woman who sold roasted yam under the big mango tree to the youngest child who chased crickets near the stream, had something to say about the wedding. Did you see how she tied her wrapper? One woman said to another as they fetched water. And the way she looked at him? The other replied. Like he was the only man left in the world. Obianuju had moved into Ebubchukwu's small compound, and although it lacked the grandeur of a mansion or tiled floors, it had something more valuable, joy. Genuine, unforced, unfiltered joy. The kind of joy that made neighbors stop by just to sit near their laughter. The house itself was simple. 2 rooms, one for sleeping, one for storage. The kitchen was a small hut at the back, and a raffia fence ran around the compound. There was no generator, but their laughter lit up the place better than any bulb could. But Obianuju did not come empty-handed. Before marriage, she had saved some money from her work with her mother. Though small, it was enough to buy 5 plastic chairs, a new mortar and pestle, and a wide clay water pot from the potter in a Makara village. She also brought a hand-woven mat her grandmother had given her before she died, the kind that carried blessings stitched into every strand. Each morning, she would wake before dawn, sweep the compound, boil water, and prepare Ibub's food before he left for the farm. She would pack his lunch in a cloth wrapper, usually roasted plantain, groundnut, and a calabash of zobo, and see him off with a kiss on the forehead. People began to notice. Old women started whispering in envy, but it was not bitter envy. It was the kind that admired, that remembered their own younger days. "I hope other girls are watching," said Mama Ajike, who had 4 sons and no daughter-in-law. "This is how a wife should behave. Not those ones that sit like logs and expect their husband to serve them." But Obianuju was more than just a wife. She was a mover. While Ibub was at the farm, she began teaching some of the younger girls skills: how to braid hair, how to make chin-chin, and how to prepare abacha with just the right touch of crayfish. Before long, other women started gathering around her compound in the afternoons, sitting on stools, gossiping, learning, and laughing. They started calling it Umwanyi Nke Uche, Obianuju's women group. Every Thursday afternoon, women from the village and nearby communities would come, not because she was the richest, not because she promised them anything, but because she understood them. She gave them space to breathe, to share their stories, to be more than just wives and mothers. She helped some start small businesses, buying akba in bulk to resell, sewing wrappers into trendy blouses for festivals, selling pepper in cups instead of heaps. Her influence began to grow quietly, like a yam tendril curling around a stick. Ibub, too, was transforming. With his new farm contract and Obianuju's wisdom guiding how to manage their earnings, he built a new house, not far from their first one, but bigger. It had cement floors, zinc roofing, 3 windows in each room, and a sitting room with a ceiling fan. When he brought his mother's old photograph and placed it on the wall, he whispered, "Mama, I hope you can see me now." He didn't forget his roots. He still walked to the farm, machete slung on his shoulder. He still fetched water on his head when needed. But now he was respected, not for his money, but for his character. And that was what made Oena, the cocoa merchant's son, boil with rage. He sat on the veranda of his father's compound, sipping cold malt, staring into space like a man who had been robbed of something sacred. "How did this happen?" he asked aloud. "Because she didn't want your money," his cousin, Ndebezi, replied. "You thought money was enough. That's your problem. I will not sit and watch him take everything." Oena snapped. "Now the whole village is treating him like he is king." Ndebezi laughed. "What do you want to do? Fight him again? You already warned him once." Obena's lips twisted. "I will do more than warn. I will destroy." The opportunity came faster than he expected. One of Obianuju's women, Chika, came to Oena one day to borrow money. Her husband had traveled and left no money for food. Oena gave her more than she asked, then leaned in close. "I want you to do something for me," he whispered. Chika frowned. "Do what?" "Nothing evil. Just carry this letter to Obianuju. Don't open it. Just deliver it." The envelope was clean, white, and sealed. The next Thursday, during the women's meeting, Chika slipped it to Obianuju under the mat. "A young boy said I should give you this. I think it's from your husband," she lied. Obianuju, curious, opened it that evening. It read, "You don't belong with him. Meet me at the old shrine behind the market on Friday evening. You owe yourself the chance to know what you could have had." No name, no signature, but the handwriting was unmistakable, Obena's. Her hands shook. She showed the letter to Ibub when he returned home. He read it, then looked into her eyes. "Do you want to go?" he asked, voice steady. She touched his hand. "I chose you. Why would I look back?" He smiled, kissed her palm, and said, "Then let's give him what he wants." Friday evening came. The market closed early. Women packed their stalls. Palm wine sellers whistled home. But behind the market, the old shrine stood in ruins, abandoned for years. Oena arrived first, standing under the crumbling archway, adjusting his cap. Obianuju arrived minutes later, with Ibub by her side, holding her hand like a shield. Obena's eyes narrowed. "So, you came with him?" he spat. "Why not?" she said boldly. "We're not hiding." "I could have given you everything," he growled. "Everything. But you gave nothing," she replied. "Not even respect." Oena stepped forward, chest puffed. You're making a mistake. One day, he will disappoint you. Ibube stepped between them. Even if I do, it will not be because I didn't try. It will not be because I was proud. There was a pause. Oena stared at him, then turned away. That night, under the glow of their lantern, Obianuju lay on Ibube's chest and whispered, "Let them say whatever they want. As long as we're together, I'm at peace." And in the quiet that followed, the wind carried the sound of a future being born, simple, steady, and strong. The dry season came suddenly in Umio, and with it came the wind, dry, harsh, restless. Dust danced through the air like ghosts of forgotten ancestors. Roofs creaked, tree branches cracked, and the air was full of warnings only the wise could hear. But for Ebubchukwu and Obianuju, life was calm. Their farm had yielded more than expected. With savings from their harvest, they had started building a small store at the edge of the village, a place where they planned to sell processed cassava, palm oil, and the zobo drink that Obianuju's customers had fallen in love with. The store stood like a promise of better days. Obianuju continued to hold her women's group meetings. Her name had become a kind of gentle wind in the village, spoken with admiration, respect, and sometimes envy. Mothers would say to their daughters, "Learn from Obianuju. She built her home with her hands and her heart." Even the elders began inviting her to speak during community meetings, asking for her ideas on how to support young girls in Umio. Her grace had become a voice, and her voice had become a light. But light, they say, attracts both good and evil. It happened on a Monday morning. The sun had not yet risen, and the smell of smoke was already choking the air. Someone came banging on their door. "Fire! Fire! Obianuju's store is burning." Ibube jumped up, threw on his wrapper, and ran barefoot toward the store. Obianuju followed closely behind, heart pounding. By the time they arrived, the fire had swallowed everything. The walls collapsed inward, the zinc roofing curled like frightened paper, and all their goods, bags of gari, cartons of zobo bottles, jerrycans of oil, were gone. Gone. People gathered, whispering in low tones. Some cried. Others blamed the harmattan wind. But a few looked at Obianuju with something darker in their eyes. Later that day, while she sat under a tree behind their house, staring at the sky in silence, Mama Noaka, an elder woman in the community, came to her quietly. "I overheard something," she said in a hushed tone. "Oena, I heard he was boasting in the next village, saying you're not as clean as you pretend to be, that you bewitched Ibube, that this fire is your punishment." Obianuju turned slowly, eyes wide. Why would he say that? Mama Noaka sighed. "Because the devil hates peace. And he's still bitter." Obianuju's hands trembled. She wanted to scream. She wanted to stand up and go find Oena, to ask him how much hatred a man could carry in his heart. But she didn't move. Instead, that night, she cried in silence. Not from the loss of the shop, but from the poison now spreading through whispers in the village. The next morning, 2 women from her group did not show up for their usual Thursday planning meeting. The next week, 5. By the 3rd week, the group had completely dissolved. Rumors spread like wildfire. She used charm to catch Ibube. Her zobo had something inside. The fire came because her hands are not clean. Ibube was furious. He wanted to confront everyone, to shout, to drag Oena before the council of elders. But Obianuju stopped him. "No," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the tears behind it. "If you fight for me, they'll say you're under my spell. Let me fight with truth." So she got up and did the unthinkable. She visited every woman in her group, house to house, barefoot, with no makeup, no pride. She swept their compounds, helped cook, bathed children, listened. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She just served. And little by little, their hearts softened again. "Mama Chinyu," she said one day, "I didn't use anything. I only gave what I had, time, love, and knowledge. If that offends the gods, let them judge me. But not you." And Mama Chinyu wept. "Forgive me, Obianuju. We were too quick to believe what we heard." Within 2 months, her name rose again from the ashes. The women returned. The group resumed. And in an unexpected twist, the village council summoned Oena to explain himself. He stammered. He denied. But then Chika, the same woman who once passed him the fake letter, stood up and confessed everything. "Oena paid me," she said. He used me to destroy what he could not have. Oena was disgraced, fined, and publicly banned from attending any community event for a full year. The elders made a new rule that no man or woman could slander another without proof. It was named Uche's Law, the voice of Obianuju. A year later, on the very land that once burned to ashes, stood a bigger, stronger, better-built store. This time, it was called Umio Women's Resource Center, an idea initiated by Obianuju and supported by the council. Women from neighboring villages came to learn, to trade, to share. And at the center of it all was the girl who had once been questioned for loving a poor farmer. Now, she was celebrated not just for her beauty, but for her strength. One afternoon, Ibube came to the store and found her teaching a group of young girls how to prepare natural oil for skin and hair. She turned when she saw him, eyes glowing like embers. "Come," she called. "You're just in time. The girls want to hear how you first saw me at the farm." He laughed, picked a chair, and sat beside her. "Should I tell them how you made me sweat more than the sun?" he teased. The girls giggled, and as they laughed, and the late afternoon sun spread golden light across the land, Ibube took her hand, looked into her eyes, and whispered, "Thank you for choosing me when no one else believed in me." Obianuju smiled. "You were never the poor one. They just didn't look closely enough." And in the eyes of everyone who watched them, love wasn't just about who had the most money, the loudest voice, or the most decorated compound. It was about two people who found each other in a world full of noise and built a life strong enough to withstand fire, lies, and storms.